Hey, how are you? This is Jacqueline from Outside the Box Educator Workshops. Thanks for joining us for our Loose Parts for All Ages workshop. If you're looking for more workshops, you can check out our website at www.outsidetheboxworkshops.ca. So let's go over what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discovering loose parts for toddlers, preschoolers, kindergarten, and school-age children. We're going to gain an insight on why we use loose parts in a childcare and school setting. Let's check out how using loose parts in your program will encourage language, literacy, math, science, and abstract concepts. Discover how loose parts will spark unique interests in your classroom, and gain ideas on how to find affordable and easily accessible loose parts. Although this workshop covers toddler, preschool, kinder, and school age, it's important to listen to the entire video. There are loose parts mentioned in each section that can be used for all ages. If you'd like to take notes during this workshop, please feel free to do so. Let's begin by talking about the theory of loose parts. The theory of loose parts was proposed back in the 1970s by an architect named Simon Nicholson. He believed that it is loose parts in our environment that empower our creativity. His idea of loose parts were materials that can be moved around, designed and then redesigned, and tinkered with. These materials created an infinite opportunity for creative engagement. Loose parts is a pretty new term in early childhood education. I'm often asked, loose parts, what's that? So loose parts are materials that can be moved, carried, combined, reinvented, redesigned, lined up, deconstructed, and put back together in multiple ways. They are materials that allow for a child to have open-ended play. They are materials with no specific set of directions. They can be used alone or in combination with other materials. Loose parts can be made of natural materials or synthetic materials. Do you have any fond memories of using loose parts as a child? I have a really fond memory of using loose parts when I was about 5 years old. My father was a carpenter and he would sit in the garage and cut wood for his projects. I always used to ask him for the scraps of wood that he didn't need anymore. I took those scraps of wood and I used them with my littlest pet shop toys. I remember making stables for the horses and little environments for the other pets as well. I remember asking my dad for the piles of sawdust so I could feed them to my animals as pretend food. Think about your childhood. Do you recall using loose parts? Most of us have fond memories of using cardboard boxes in multiple ways, or toilet paper tubes, or pots and pans. You might wonder, what does the term open-ended materials mean? So open-ended materials are toys and materials that can be used in a variety of ways. They can become anything that you can imagine, and they can evolve over time. They foster play, creativity, and imagination. They encourage children to create and problem solve as they explore the world around them. They encourage social development and social interactions between children. And children develop cognitive skills by using open-ended materials. They usually engage children for a longer period of time, and they have multiple stages, and they develop as the time goes on. Open-ended materials can be things like wooden blocks, animals, gems and jewels, magnetic building toys, Lego or Duplo or Mega blocks, straws and connectors, dolls, cars, Tinker toys, marble runs, dress-up items, toy trains, Zoob, action figures, and K'NEX. Let's now talk about the term closed-ended. So closed-ended materials are activities that have an end result or a specific objective to achieve. They're good for building attention and help with task completion. They have structure and they have a very clear beginning, middle, and end. They are materials that you can only use in one way and they only have one purpose. The downside of using closed-ended materials is it's hard to promote language because of the limited interactions with these types of materials. Closed-ended materials are beneficial, though, for children who have difficulty with task completion. When you're setting up your daycare or classroom, it's really important to have a combination of both open-ended and closed-ended materials. If you provide only closed-ended materials, your students are likely going to finish tasks quickly, become bored, and uninspired. This could result in children displaying negative behaviors because they don't have materials to use to inspire their imagination. Take a good look at your environment to ensure that you have both open-ended and closed-ended materials for your students to use. Some examples of closed-ended materials are puzzles, crafts, memory games, mazes, shape sorters, cooking, stringing beads, books, ring stackers, stacking cups, board games, and lacing cards. The problem with closed-ended materials is that children play with them for a short amount of time and then they lose interest. They can't expand on what they're playing, and it's difficult to imagine using those materials in a variety of ways. You'll often see closed-ended toys being sold as a fad at Christmas time. Fingerlings, Furbies, Hatchimals, Tamagotchis. These are toys that children are so excited to receive at Christmas time, and then they play with it for 5 minutes and they get bored and they move on to something else. This is because they're closed-ended. There's no way for them to expand on their play, and there's no way for the child to imagine the item as something other than what it is. Think about the students that you're teaching. Do your students have a favorite loose part? I like to keep a variety of loose parts in my building area. In this photo, you can see I have napkin rings, kitchen tiles, plastic colorful pieces, wooden bells, wooden egg holders, wooden dowels, pine cones, CD cases, CDs, and the lids from squeezable applesauce containers. Perhaps you've noticed your students taking small items and putting them into buckets or containers. Perhaps you've noticed very detailed structures with wooden blocks. You might even notice that every day the wooden blocks turn into something completely new and exciting. Perhaps your students like to add natural materials to their play, like stones or rocks. In this photo, this little girl took the blue cardboard pieces and used them as water for the ducks. She also took green popsicle sticks and pretended it was grass. Then she used the sorting cubes as a fence for her animal's environment. You'd be really amazed at what your students can create even with recycled materials. This student is using wood scraps that a parent had donated from a recent home renovation. As you can see, loose parts can become a variety of amazing things. It's all up to the child's imagination. Now let's talk about how to introduce loose parts to toddlers. Toddlers are at the age where they're interested in how things work. They're beginning to become researchers and they're beginning to understand the tinkering stage of play. Tinkering is all about hands-on experiences, learning from failures, and unstructured time to explore and invent. Introducing loose parts into a toddler program may seem intimidating. It's best to start introducing loose parts into your toddler program slowly. Placing too many loose parts at once can become overwhelming. Start out by placing larger loose parts in your program that will allow for children to play safely and allow for easy cleanup. Of course, safety is always our top priority. So how are toddlers going to use the loose parts? Toddlers are at the trial and error stage of their play. They're learning through cause and effect. It's important for toddlers to do things such as filling, dumping, pushing and pulling, transferring, and throwing objects. When you're giving them loose parts, be intentional with the loose parts that you introduce. Ask yourself, what are your expectations for how children are going to use these loose parts? Make predictions on how the children are going to use them. Provide loose parts with a variety of textures and colors. Toddlers are drawn to sensory experiences. This allows toddlers to build a deeper connection with the world around them. Allow opportunities for toddlers to use all of their senses. Loose parts will provide unlimited play opportunities and infinite possibilities for the children. It's going to help them develop their imagination and deeper problem solving. Let's talk about behaviors. I often get this question. The toddler educator doesn't want to include loose parts in the program because Johnny just throws them all day. So let's talk about the behavior. The first step you're going to take is identify the behavior and then understand the developmental level of the child. We know that Johnny is a toddler, and therefore he is exploring cause and effect. The second step you're going to take is tell the child and teach the child what they can do instead. So instead of throwing objects, teach the child what they can do with the objects. Step 3 is going to be to create an activity where the child can safely throw things. And step 4 is going to be the educator joining in on the activity. As educators, we always want to be modeling how to use the materials appropriately. So let's talk about why is Johnny throwing toys all day? Because Johnny is a toddler and he is at the cause and effect stage of his development. He's exploring how things work. He wants to see what happens to the object when it hits the ground. He might be examining how it flies through the air, and he's learning through trial and error. This is how we all learn throughout our lifetime, and it starts in the early years. Rather than refusing to place the loose parts in your environment, remember to be intentional. Meet the needs of the children. Introduce something Johnny is welcome to throw. Your intention will now become offering loose parts with the intention to throw. Create a game of throwing soft blocks into a bucket or laundry basket. Create a ring toss game with paper plates and cardboard tubes. Offer a pom-pom station where throwing is encouraged. Educators are often intimidated to add loose parts into their program because they worry about choking hazards. Here's a scenario. Susie puts everything in her mouth. I worry about choking hazards when using loose parts. What do I do? So let's talk about the development. Toddlers need to put objects into their mouths. Mouthing lets them explore shape, texture, and taste. Mouthing is how toddlers learn about their environment. You need to provide appropriate loose parts that can be mouthed safely. Provide materials that are easy to wash and sanitize, and model how you would like the loose parts to be used. Always consider the amount of supervision that is needed. If you're working with toddlers, it's important to include large loose parts that are not a choking hazard. Here are some examples of some amazing loose parts for toddlers. Wooden gems. These are large pieces of wood that have been sanded and painted. They are large enough that they are not a choking hazard, and they come in a variety of colors and shapes. You can find these on Etsy and rightbrainedmom.com. You could also use Easter eggs and Play-Doh to make towers, or some sturdy plastic cups to create towers and forts. We all know how much toddlers love building towers and then knocking them down. How about using jumbo pom-poms, egg cartons, and paper towel rolls? You can also use ball pit balls in a variety of ways. Add them to your sensory bin, create a ball pit using an old kiddie pool, or for filling and dumping. Try adding mirrors around your room. Try adding mirrors with laminated paint samples. Here we have a really simple loose part, large beads on a string. I have observed toddlers pulling the string and beads around the classroom like a pet. If you have pool noodles lying around, slice them up and add them to your classroom. They are perfect for stringing on rope outdoors, adding to your ball pit, or building towers with. Recycled materials are always a favorite with toddlers. You can use CDs, paper towel rolls, and cardboard inserts. Using leftover CD and DVD cases are a great addition to your building area. You can create giant dominoes, roads for cars, and structures. When heading outdoors with toddlers, try including some baking materials in your outdoor space. Toddlers love using natural materials for pretend baking. Here we can see muffins made of wood chips and some play equipment made into an oven. It's amazing to see the level of engagement that is created by just adding baking materials to your outdoor space. When winter comes, add those same baking materials into the snow. Bring out watercolor paint pucks to color the snow or make colorful muffins, and create some awesome sensory experiences. If you're looking for a list of loose parts for toddlers, here are some great ideas. Cups, pine cones, CDs, wood scraps, cardboard boxes, silk scarves, ball pit balls, paint samples, cans with no sharp edges, rocks, tinfoil, cotton balls, wood slices, napkin rings, DVD cases, empty bottles, egg cartons, baking materials, PVC pipes, sticks, lids, mirrors, plastic eggs, shower curtain rings, large pom-poms, sponges, cardboard tubes, plastic containers, fabric scraps, pipe cleaners, handles and doorknobs, feathers, pots and pans, silicone muffin liners, wicker balls, and cardboard packaging. Now let's move on into preschool. Providing loose parts in a preschool program supports invention, problem solving, and a sense of wonder for children. Loose parts encourages language development as the children are introduced to new, exciting materials. It offers many opportunities for children to use natural materials and objects in their environment. This allows them to understand the natural world around them and manipulate materials however they would like. Loose parts provide many experiences for children to be creative, curious, and imaginative. So how do we introduce loose parts into a preschool program? The most important thing is to play with the children. Model how to use the materials. Talk to the children and ask them questions. Introduce easy cleanup loose parts at the beginning. Document how children are using the materials. Observe the learning that's happening. And ask yourself, are the children engaged? Are they expanding on their play? Can we add more materials? And did they use the materials in unique and unexpected ways? The great thing about loose parts is they don't need to be fancy or expensive. You don't need to have a large budget or a certain environment to make loose parts successful. Loose parts can be implemented indoors and outdoors in a variety of settings. Let's take a look at some preschool loose parts that you can add to your program. Add some wood slices into your outdoor space. These are great for making walkways, making hopscotch, building forts, building roads, and building obstacle courses. You can also use the wood indoors in sensory bins, for creating in the building area, or for gross motor games. If you're looking for a great way to obtain some wood slices, consider contacting your local tree removal company and ask them if they'd like to make a donation of some thin sliced wood pieces. More often than not, they're super happy to help. When wintertime comes, add some colored ice into the outdoor space. Frozen colored ice blocks are great for counting, sorting, and treasure hunts. Children often pretend that they are gems and put them into sleds and carry them around the yard. You could also make some homemade dancing ribbons and bring them outdoors. These are super simple to make. All you need are some shower curtain rings and curling ribbon. My original assumption was that the children would just use them to dance, But as I observed the play, the children used them as superpowers, butterfly wings, and to decorate the play structure. You can also add felt into your classroom for some added dramatic play. Making your own ice cream, cupcake, or pizza felt set is really simple. More often than not, you'll see the children carrying the felt materials around the room and using them in a variety of ways. It's easy to add recycled materials into a preschool room. Here we see two preschoolers working together to create a magical oven. In the second photo, we've used pegboard and straws to create a tinkering activity. Check your recycle bin for some cardboard inserts that you can add with some other loose parts as well. Magnetic building sets are another amazing open-ended building material that you can use in a preschool program. Here you can see the children used some plastic blocks and some dominoes to create a library alongside the magnetic blocks. If you have children that really love exploring ramps and bridges, try adding hardwood floor scraps into your program. These are great for creating car ramps, bridges, forts, marble runs, and anything that the students will come up with. There are lots of unique ways that children in your program will use wood blocks. Here we've added superhero finger puppets onto a tabletop activity. The students created a superhero fortress to protect them from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The second photo shows something that was created by two boys using blocks and animals. They used the thin wood planks to create a laptop, and they said that it was a store that transforms into a zoo. Another unique material that you can use are fake ice cubes. You can find these at the dollar store in a variety of shapes and colors. Students love using these for sorting, building, and adding to their dramatic play. You could also create story stones with preschoolers. These are really easy to make and are a great accessory for circle time. You can have the students tell you their own story out loud, or work together as a group to create a silly story. You can also leave the story stone characters out with a variety of loose parts to see how the children use them. Here are some more ideas for preschool loose parts: shells, bottle caps, recyclables, sticks, pebbles, gems, fake ice cubes, wood hardware, marker caps, bubble wrap, packing peanuts, styrofoam inserts, fabric scraps, wrapping paper, peg dolls, cups, ribbon spools, corks, egg cartons, silk scarves, muffin papers, mosaic tiles, shower curtain rings, baking materials, funnels, costume jewelry, golf tees, dowels, mirrors, buttons, CDs, feathers, sea glass, pine cones, PVC pipe, hair rollers, craft sticks, loofahs, wood planks, blankets and sheets, wood slices, and cork pot rests. Now let's move on to kindergarten and school age. This is where you're going to see your students really evolve in their play. You're going to see a whole new side of their creativity. Using loose parts with kindergarten or school-age children is going to help with problem solving, engineering, creativity, concentration, hand-eye coordination, fine motor development, gross motor development, language and vocabulary, math, scientific thinking, literacy, and social-emotional development. Loose parts really help with all areas of development: the physical health and well-being, the social-emotional development, the approaches to learning, thinking abilities, and communication, language, and literacy. So how do we implement loose parts into a kindergarten or school-age setting? You can add loose parts to the arts and crafts area. The first photo shows our creation station where we've added a bunch of loose parts, tape, ribbons, glue, and recycled materials, and we allowed the students to create anything in their imagination. Loose parts can become a tinker tray. Here I've created a tinker tray using sliced pool noodles, pipe cleaners, toothpicks, feathers, receipt paper rolls, stir sticks, clothespins, and straws. The middle photo shows a student that's created a bird's nest and a bird using pool noodle slices, corks, and feathers. The bottom right photo shows how our students used the Tinker tray to create wiener dogs. I love the fact that these wiener dogs are actually able to stand up. In the top right photo, the same materials were used and the students created a swing set that actually moved back and forth. How amazing is that? Adding loose parts into the building area sparks a lot of interest. In our building area, we added blankets and fabric scraps, recycled cardboard from Bath and Body Works, paper towel rolls, and kitchen tiles. If you're looking for a way to spice up your sensory activities, consider adding loose parts to your Play-Doh or plasticine. The children are really able to add a lot more detail when they're given loose parts with this activity. You can even use loose parts during math and literacy activities. The first photo shows a group of students who started a rock collection. Every day when it was time to go out for recess, they asked for a plastic bag so they could collect rocks. When their bags were full, they compared their collections by lining them up side by side. They wanted to count to see whose rock collection had the most rocks. Since there were too many rocks for them to rote count and remember, the strategy that they used was to create two lines side by side to see which line was longer, and therefore they would find out who had the most rocks. You can also use loose parts as a starting point for name writing. They can use small materials to trace the letters in their name. This is great for fine motor skills. In the third photo, we used glittery rocks as an accessory for a math activity. This math activity included making math sentences. Adding loose parts to your outdoor space is always a lot of fun. Try adding recyclable containers, baking materials, trays, pylons, shovels, and tires. The middle photo shows how one of our students went fishing using one of those balls in a cup. The third photo shows a group of boys who worked together to create a pretend fire pit inside the tire. They then took the pylons and put them into the handles of the shovel. When I asked them what they made with this, they told me they made marshmallow roasters. I was really proud of their invention. Even something as simple as building kites with a piece of string and some paper can really spark a child's creativity. Every day for weeks, these boys asked to make kites and paper airplanes. Since we weren't allowed to run in the classroom, we brought them outdoors to see if they would fly. In the second photo, a group of girls used some loose parts to create their own play structure. You can use recycled materials to make boats to play with in the puddles when the snow starts to melt. You can use tires for a balancing activity, or use some string, some clamps, and some blankets to make forts beside the trees. You can also use loose parts to expand on existing ideas. During this activity, the kindergarten students made puppets, and then they wanted to expand on their activity by creating a stage. So out came the wooden blocks, and we created a stage for their performance. When I brought out the felt pizza set, the students used the wooden blocks to create their own pizza shop. They used the thin wooden planks to make computers, and they brought the pizzas over to the shelf and used the shelf as an oven. When I noticed that the block area wasn't getting as much attention, I added a toy steering wheel. Just adding something new to the block area sparked the children's imaginations. Here they created a car with a force field, wings, and that could drive on water. They made sure to make it big enough for all three of them to fit. Adding loose parts into your curriculum is also a great way to document students' interests and development. When I added felt cupcakes into my program, the students decided to expand on their play. They made their own signs, menus, and paper money. I was able to observe the level of writing that the students were doing. It was also nice to see which students were able to write numbers without assistance and which ones needed more practice. You're going to want to save up your allowance for that $600 cupcake. The students used loose parts in the art area to create instruments for their own marching band. Here we have an awesome electric guitar. If you're looking for some ideas on where to find loose parts, ask for parent donations, check thrift stores, take a look at garage sales, head over to Habitat for Humanity, take a look at Lee Valley Tools, take a look around on Recycle Day, check out the Kijiji free section, ask your friends and family, join a Buy Nothing or Free Cycle Facebook group, trade with other educators through a Facebook group in your area, or create your own Facebook group for your daycare, school board, or town, all about reusing unwanted items. Thank you so much for watching our Loose Parts workshop. I hope you enjoyed it and learned about the value of loose parts in early childhood education. If you'd like to learn more about us, please check out our website or join us on Facebook. We hope to hear from you soon.